Inspiration from a broadcast perspective, I mean, how could I not mention Jim Nance?
Right.
Kevin Harlan, I mean, just such great people, great voices. Okay, one thing, I don't know if it's a superstition or just like
Your routine.
my routine.
Yeah.
I don't eat before any game that I do,
Yeah.
which is an issue when there's like a 13-hour doubleheader.
That's
I don't
funny.
know.
You know, they say like football players should learn ballet to like help with footwork. So
I think-
broadcasters should be theater kids essentially.
Absolutely. I think that like choir has helped my breathing, and like,
Yeah.
I now can speak and project correctly and not screw up my voice.
Everyone, welcome back to the Next Gen podcast. Today, as I say every time, I have a very exciting guest. This one, not only family friend, Blue Valley North alum, current OU student, family history in the broadcast world for sure. Jack, thanks for coming on today. How are you doing?
Absolutely, doing great. How are you?
I'm pretty good, you know, get to sit down and talk a little sports this afternoon, so not going to complain too much. Everyone out there that's listening that doesn't know Jack yet, he has actually done work at 810, technically on the ESPN side. So a little shout out to Lainey Boger and you guys' show, but tell me a little bit about that. Why did you get involved with, first of all, let's back up. Let's start at the very beginning. Why'd you get into journalism?
This is an amazing question. So growing up, loved sports. Been a huge part of my family, part of my life. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But sports have always been this huge thing in my life. And one day I realized that I could talk about them. I
Right.
love to talk. I've always been a big loved to perform. I did a lot of theater, music, and all that, and still love to perform. And then I found out, I can combine this love of performing with this love of sports, and found it in journalism.
Right.
And I just love being able to tell stories, and
Yeah.
being able to tell other people's story. I think it's a gift. It's a gift and a privilege to tell people's stories, and I get to do that every day. And so, like, why would I not want to do that?
That's something I feel like is really common amongst anyone that works in sports media, is we know we have the long hours. We know it's going to be a grind. You don't have weekends anymore, but hey, you get to go to the games for free.
Yeah, I mean, and my Saturdays being up at OU, being in the studio at 7 a.m., it's early, but it's worth it.
Right, exactly. So before we jump into the full story, we have our quick, if you listen to any of the 810 shows, Soren Petro does a 2-minute drill. We have our own like Walmart version of that.
Love it.
So just gut answers, no wrong answers, but I will judge them.
Okay, that's fair enough.
All right, what's your lucky number?
13,
Why?
Salvador Perez.
Love that.
Yeah,
All
growing
right.
up, big Salvi guy, and I was like, 13's my number. So
It's kind of funny to think like we are at the age that we have watched Salvi most of our lives.
yeah,
I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I think about this all the time. Obviously, being like a KU student and a KU fan, I have not known a life without Bill Self as like the basketball coach for KU. He, I think, was hired in April of 2003, and I was born in like January of 2003. So he's literally been the coach my whole life.
yeah.
People
Wow.
keep teasing retirement, and I'm like, not yet, not yet.
He's got quite a while left.
I think so too.
I mean, if Belichick's gonna come back,
I know. It's that one to me. I'm like,
weird.
you already hit like the top of what you could do in your career. Why would you keep going?
Hey,
I don't know.
his grind. He doesn't want to stop the grind.
Fair
I mean,
enough.
I can appreciate that.
You know, that means he truly loves what he does. So,
Absolutely.
fair enough. All right. Who has been the biggest influence in your career?
Ooh, that is a tough question. I think, like, biggest personal influence, so many, but I have to give a huge shout out to Kelly Curley at Blue Valley North.
Okay.
Athletic director at Blue Valley North, really gave me my first opportunities
Right.
to do anything and just to try whatever I wanted.
Right.
And that, the support she gave me and the time she gave me, I'll forever be thankful. Inspiration from a broadcast perspective, I mean, how could I not mention Jim Nance?
Right.
Kevin Harlan, I mean, just such great people, great voices, and great vocabulary. I
Right.
just, look up to them in every aspect.
So I changed them a little bit. Like if it's an athlete, we're going to change it a little bit versus a broadcaster. But I ask these same questions pretty much to everyone, and I really I go through and try to guess what I think your answers are going to be.
Okay.
You didn't give Grandpa a shout out.
Well, I mean, okay, yes, absolutely. My grandpa, a huge inspiration in.
Should we
in
name
every
drop?
Aspect.
We should
absolutely.
name drop.
My grandpa, Bill Hancock, huge inspiration in all of my life, and also my other grandpa, Steve McGuire, also a huge athlete.
Right. Gotta give them
inspiration in
both
my
some
life.
love here.
And I just, I mean, I look up to him in both of them in everything I do, and try and be just like them. But yeah.
All right, sweet. Okay, again, obviously we're going to talk about him more later, but what would you say your biggest superstition is?
That's tough. I mean, I'm not really a superstitious person.
Really?
I know. I mean, okay, one thing, I don't know if it's a superstition or just like
Your routine.
my routine.
Yeah.
I don't eat before any game that I do.
Fair.
Which is an issue when there's like a 13-hour doubleheader. But when I'm like calling a game, I tend not to eat before the game. I don't know why. It's just my thing.
Okay, I've actually heard that from a couple people now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Like either they have like a set, like they don't have a meal before, or they are like, this is my game day announcing meal that I know isn't gonna like mess up my stomach. I'm not gonna, feel all gross.
Yeah, my big thing, I don't eat, and then after any game, I go to Quick Trip and just like get a ton of just snacks, junk and whatever. The problem though is there's not any Quick Trips in Norman, so like I'm adapting my routine.
What's the backup plan?
I mean, Brahms.
Okay.
Because it's available down there. I might as well.
Why not? It's great. Okay, what's your favorite game or sports related thing you've gotten to work so far? Like
That's
the most memorable
question. I would say I did the NAIA volleyball national championship quarterfinals a couple years ago, and that was incredibly memorable. Got to drive up to Iowa with my dad and just call a college volleyball tournament for a national broadcast, which was really, really cool. And I would say that was really memorable. And then my first broadcast I did at OU, it was a softball game.
Oh, cool.
Wasn't, fall ball softball game,
right.
Which OU softball.
Yeah, I was going to say
like,
it is OU softball.
Watching Patty Gasso coach two teams at the same time, why would I not complain? And I got to work on that broadcast and run a camera, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I will say I have always been a really big OU softball baseball fan. We used to go with family that was OU fans. My family's KU fans. We would go to those games, and I'd wear a KU hoodie with an OU shirt underneath. And we'd get there, and I'd take off my hoodie. My parents were like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's OU softball, Mom."
I mean, how can you not cheer for OU?
Exactly.
I'm very excited for Diamond Sports season. I think it'll be a great year.
I'm sure, yeah. And then last one before we fully dive into your story is, what would be your all-time dream job?
Ooh, that is tough. I mean, play-by-play announcer in any aspect. I'm honored to be able to get any work and do anything I can do in sports. It's a gift to be able to work in sports, and I love it. So.
What would be your favorite sport?
People ask me this all the time, and I really don't have one. For play-by-play, I'm a big volleyball fan. I don't know why. I love the pace. It's an awesome sport. I also love the diamond sports. I'm a big baseball, softball guy. And lastly, I would love to do football. But football's hard to work in, but I would love to do it. Right.
I feel like everyone I have talked to in the broadcast realm has like their niche thing that always shocks me. Last week I talked to someone who was like, I love sports broadcasts. I would do any sport I can, but hockey is my thing. I'd rather have like a minor job doing hockey than a major job doing any other sport. Like it's my love and passion. And
yeah, I love volleyball. I don't know why. At BVN I think the sport I really did the most, just because there's so much.
Yeah.
There's so many times they host events, especially my freshman and sophomore year when I was doing a lot of public address announcing. And so I think that was forced to learn the sport very quickly, which I think.
How'd you handle that? How did you say, hey, I have this opportunity, but I have to have the knowledge as well? How'd you jump on that?
That's a good question. I have a lot of friends that are great volleyball players, and I, talked to them. I was like, what do I need to know?
Right.
And then from there, YouTube. I just watched like a lot of YouTube videos about just what volleyball is, how to play volleyball,
All right.
the niche things in volleyball,
Yeah.
and I've started picking up on those. And
How'd you go into your first game or volleyball match, right?
match, yeah, I was terrified. So the first match I did was for BVN was public address. I wasn't doing play-by-play, and it was BVN's volleyball coach Matt Allen is a phenomenal coach, but he's known for he's pretty strict and he's pretty harsh, and he'll say it like it is, and he's terrifying.
He's known for being just a little bit crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah, and phenomenal coach, phenomenal person. And he came up to me the first time I was sitting at the table and was like, "We're not going to announce today." And I was like, "Oh, okay. I have no clue what's happening. The athletic director told me to be here. Coach is telling me to not." And
Yeah.
what? We worked it out, figured it out. But going into that first one, I was terrified because he is scary.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, going and not really knowing the sport, I was a little uncomfortable, but especially because it was during COVID. And like doing PA during COVID when there's no one, because the whole point of a public address announcer is to get the crowd pumped up and like give something to the crowd. There's no crowd there other than like a couple parents. Right. So it was difficult, but it was difficult because I didn't really have that feedback on like, did I announce that well? I don't know.
Yeah.
But overcame it, and it was a lot of fun.
Obviously, you did just fine. They kept asking you back. So
thank you.
I feel like that's the one thing you can know. Like, you're going to hear either bad reviews or you're going to be asked back.
That's fair. The thing I love about public address, though, is you have that live feedback, especially when, it's a great play by your home team. And you have that feedback of the crowd's going crazy after you give that call. I did something right.
People are excited. I must have said something they liked. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you mentioned Mrs. Curley. Miss Curley? I don't even know.
Mrs. Yeah, Mrs.
I don't even. Right. How did you get in contact with her? How did you figure out the steps to make it happen? Yeah.
So it was really weird. I think my path into broadcast journalism, I don't know if it's like a ton of others. Started in high school sports, so yes, it definitely is like everybody's. Yeah. But I think the way I went about it may be a little different because it was in the middle of a global pandemic and sports weren't really happening. I did a couple games my 8th grade year. I had asked our PE teacher, Luke Newell, I was like, hey, can I call a couple games just for fun? And he was like, sure. And I did. The Overland Trail Middle School plays Leawood Middle School at BVN.
Yep.
And it's like the feeder game, and it's a really big deal for those players.
For 8th graders, yes.
For the 8th graders, yeah. They get to play on the court that they're going to play at in high school, and it's cool. And I got to announce that my 8th grade year, and that was the first sporting event I ever did. And then from there, when I reached high school, I was like, I want to do this. So I found Miss Curley's email on the school's website, and I just sent her an email and was like, hey, can I announce? I can bring a camera and set up live streams, or I'll do PA. I'll do whatever you want. And she, as she was trying to be an athletic director and administrator in the middle of a pandemic, she didn't respond at first. And I don't blame her at all.
Right.
And then the next week, I emailed her and was like, "Hey, I'm still here. I'm happy to do this." And she responded within like an hour and was like, "Hey, we have a soccer game tonight. Can you be there?" And I was like,
"Sweet,
okay." And
soccer it is.
So yeah, soccer. I did public address, and that was the first time I worked a BVN sport, and I guess I did okay. And they kept asking me to come do games, and I kept doing some games, and went on from there. And then I emailed a bunch of local college athletic directors with the same thing, sent them a demo reel, and was just like, "Hey, I'm a high school student looking to get some more experience and some more work. What can I do?" And Mid-America Nazarene University and Rockhurst both responded, and I got to do play-by-play for them, which was
How
just
old were
a ton of fun.
you?
This was so when I started at BVN, I was a freshman.
So you were like itty bitty, like
yeah,
14?
I was 14 or 15. And then when I started at Rockhurst started my sophomore year.
'Kay.
Same with MNU. Yeah, both of those started my sophomore year.
Dang. Because I remember going to the games and being on the field doing photography, and some of the students being like, that voice sounds familiar. Like, what? And then I was like, oh, yeah, it's Jack Hancock. And they're like, that's a 14-year-old's voice? Like, he sounds so professional.
Thank you.
Just natural.
I spent a lot of time watching sports broadcasters. You know, what do they do? How do they say things? Really paying attention to like how I responded to what they were saying. Like, what gets the biggest response out of me? How can they deliver a line that gets this response? And then I kind of pieced together all the things I learned from that. And,
right.
Yeah.
You mentioned your demo reel.
Yes.
How would you explain what that is to, young broadcasters who are like, I want to get the jobs. I don't know how do I put my resume together, essentially. What did you put on there?
So and it's changed as I've gone through school and learned what a demo reel should be. At the time, it was just a bunch of clips of me announcing, which essentially is what a demo reel is. It's your best work. Just put it all together. Don't stress about it. Put all your best work together and send it out to as many people as you can. And the worst you're going to hear is a no.
You're going to hear a lot of those.
You're going to hear a lot of those, so be ready. But, like, the worst you're going to hear is a no. No one's going to be mad at you for taking initiative.
Right.
And then you'll get your foot in the door and people will remember you. I initially, Rockhurst was like, we don't have a need. We're fine. And then followed back up 6 months later, and they were like, okay, something opened up. Please come do this.
Right.
I think it was a volleyball tournament.
You and volleyball.
I know.
It's
random. My sport. I love it.
Yeah. All right. So what did your time commitments look like? Trying to be a high school kid, have a social life, manage theater stuff obviously is a huge time commitment, and trying to build up your career on the side.
Yeah, I definitely didn't and still don't do it well. I mean, I'm getting better as I'm growing and learning. There's a lot to learn about time management.
I don't think anyone in journalism fully grasps time management, and I don't really think it's our fault.
I agree.
I think it's just the nature of the beast of, jumping on last minute projects that take a long time to edit and go back, and projects that have a lot of research to do. It's not just those couple hours you're at the field. It's the 6 hours before and 6 hours after, of driving there, setting up, getting there early, figuring out how to pronounce the names. That's my biggest struggle.
Yeah.
But
turn around a 3-minute package and you have 12 hours. Go ahead, have fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's 3 minutes. It shouldn't be that much work.
Yeah,
No, it's a little more than that.
Yeah.
So what would you say about how often were you, as a high school kid, producing these games?
Yeah, so I pretty much didn't leave Blue Valley North.
Yeah,
I basically lived in that school. So school would start at 7:30. I'd get there at 7:30. I'd do school, and then I'd have rehearsal for a musical, and then I'd sometimes leave rehearsal early to go call a game, or finish rehearsal and then immediately go to call a game. And thankfully, everyone's very understanding. For the most part, all the athletic people were very understanding and helpful, and got me food and
right.
I can't thank Stevie Gibson and Kelly Curley enough. They truly changed my life, so thank you. But yeah, I think I didn't really leave BVN, and then sometimes I would leave straight from rehearsal to go to Rockhurst and go but I loved it, and so I didn't complain. And then right after the game, go do my homework.
Right. Stay up all night working on that. Yeah. How did your voice not get tired? From singing and speaking to yelling into a microphone.
There were definitely times where I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But I'm a big fan, big water drinker. Love water.
Keep it simple.
Sometimes I would steam. I steam my voice. I have a little throat steamer thing. I haven't used that in a long time though. That's a big
good.
like all the Broadway actors used all those, and I like water.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't know. Somehow I think doing it as much as I did just kind of built up the strength to.
Honestly,
be able to
probably
go.
like starting that up while you're going through puberty.
Yeah.
Did you ever have any voice cracks, like little awkward moments?
Thankfully, never on.
Like knock on wood.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood. Thankfully, not while I'm calling a game. Definitely, like, talking to people during, like, at a game, sure.
Yeah.
But never into the mic so far.
Huh.
Knock on wood.
Your brain just, like, turns on, like, work mode.
I don't know. And I guess voice cracks haven't really been a huge thing for me. Which I don't know if that's common or normal. I don't know. Did a lot of, like, vocal training and singing to make sure that wouldn't.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if how much I sang while going through puberty probably affected that.
I was going to say, I kind of bet it did help your voice just in general.
I'm very thankful. Singing and then playing the trumpet because like, my air, I think, helps.
That's funny. They say like football players should learn ballet to like help with footwork.
Absolutely.
So broadcasters should be theater kids essentially.
Absolutely. I think that like choir has helped with my breathing and like I now can speak and project correctly and not screw up my voice.
Yeah, that's something I don't know how to do. I don't know how to do a lot of speaking things, but that's one thing you got down. So
well, thank you.
So going throughout high school, continuing that career as a high school athletics announcer, figuring out school. Obviously, we know you ended up at OU. What was the journey like? What were you thinking?
Yeah, so I applied kind of all over. I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to double major. The plan was to double major in political science and journalism wherever I go.
Okay.
Just to have, I love politics. I love law. Wanted to have that to fall back on. And I was after touring Indiana, was pretty dead set. I was like, this campus is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I love it here. And then it's ridiculously expensive to go to Indiana.
Yeah.
And I had toured OU and loved it. And it was really down to OU and IU. Those were the final two. And I was like, well, I could go to school and not have a bunch of debt and like get even better experiences because my grandpa went to OU.
Yeah.
He's very close with the people in the athletic department still.
Yeah.
A lot of connections in Oklahoma that I don't necessarily have at IU, and I'm paying more money. So I was like, well, paying less money, more connections, and journalism is all connections. And I'm definitely realizing that more and more. And so I am so incredibly proud of the decision I made. It took a long time to make, but
It's all right. It's fine. How did you get in? Obviously, your grandpa has connections, but, first day of classes, how were you like, hey, this is what I do? That was the one thing. OU was in my top 3 schools. I looked at KU, OU, and Texas, all because of sports media. And I was scared of OU.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty much told, you're not going to get, like, on-field experience day one. And that's what sold me on KU, was they're kind of like, it's a smaller program. We're going to get you on the field, do what you want to do. And I was like afraid of the competition at OU. How do you deal with all that?
I think so. The biggest thing at OU, they have 3 studio shows that are completely student produced,
right?
Which is incredible. In a state of the art studio that is like a new studio that they just got over the summer, and it's beautiful. And freshmen, they don't want to just throw in to be anchoring a newscast because that's a lot. Having a producer in your ear counting you down and having to write a news story and then call the families of, like, earlier this year we had a story about 2 babies that were locked in a car and passed away. And, like, having to call those families to confirm that. And no freshman should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And so they make you start on crew and doing stuff like that. But if you want to get involved and you show up and you put in the time and the work, they appreciate you, and that's how you get on air.
You prove your worth.
You prove your worth pretty much. And so I showed up and I worked and I applied for the shows and just kept showing up every day. A lot of people just don't show up, which is really weird to me. I'm like, you want to do this and you're just gonna
right. I produced a show at KU, and that was my biggest thing is you would think the host of the show, it was like set as a game show. It was about sports betting, but it was basically like a game show of, we had a whole point system and, you know, whatever bets you put, we're going to hope they work out, and then you get points if they do. And so I needed in advance them to send me the graphics. Just be like, tell me what team you're betting on, so I can at least have a picture or a video of, like, you know, to put over the screen so that no one can tell you're reading a teleprompter.
Yeah.
You know, just like the basic general stuff. And they would send it to me like 5 minutes before they were supposed to be there. And I'm like, I'm trying to set like our green screen right now. I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
And I had multiple times where hosts would just casually be like, oh, I can't. I'm not going to be there. I'm getting lunch.
That's
I'm
crazy.
like, cool. So I would go and sit and be like, well, whatever his face is, said this is what, I don't know why he thought this was a good pick. And it just makes everything look so much less professional.
Yeah. I think, and thankfully all of the, because I think they kind of weed out the people that don't want to show up by making you work on the crew.
Right.
I think thankfully all of the hosts and anchors really want to be there, and they're really good.
Right.
Like, they're getting jobs at news stations right out of after graduation.
The amount of awards that the journalism school has at OU is absurd.
It's incredible, and I'm very thankful to get to be a part of that. And so I just applied and got working. And then the other aspect that's through the journalism school, through Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication.
Yep.
And then also through the athletic department, they have this thing called Sooner Vision, and they do every sports broadcast and also the video content you see on all social media.
Yeah.
And so, and all the big screens in arena.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really cool to me. I applied to work there and have done a lot of like EVS replay.
Right.
And have created a lot of social media content for OU athletics. Like,
right.
It's incredible. And for that, it's the same thing. If you show up and work, the work is there.
Yeah.
You just got to say you want it.
So what's next?
That's a great question. Still trying to figure that out.
First of all, Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas.
Yeah.
Yep. That's a great question. I think for me, my next goal and the next thing I really want to work on is getting better as a writer and producer.
Okay.
I love telling stories, and I think that's my favorite aspect of announcing. And when I was calling games, I always loved doing the research and interviews and figuring out my storylines.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the real world, when it's not a high school broadcast, that's really the job of the producer.
Yeah.
And so I think I would love to go down the producing route and kind of take some of that on. But, yeah, what's next?
Graduate.
A spring semester.
Yeah.
And we'll go from there.
Yeah. I feel like usually when I talk to people, most of the time it's like recent grads. So usually it's like, what's next?
Yeah.
I'm going to find a job.
Find a job.
And I'm like, well, I guess you still have a lot of time to figure it out. You're just ahead of the game career-wise than a lot of people in general. I mean, I know in any industry right now, I'm about to graduate in May, and all my friends are like, I don't even know what I want to do yet. Something in business. I'm like, that is terrifying. But at least you have a path set out.
Well,
so before we close out,
Yes.
I've mentioned it a couple times. I do want to talk about your grandpa.
Absolutely, yes.
So, the Bill Hancock. Going through his LinkedIn was really entertaining. I was like, what hasn't he done? So from your eyes and from how I know you went to a couple playoff games and everything with him just from social media and knowing that you guys were gone from school around finals all the time. Tell me about growing up with a grandpa like that.
Yeah. So a huge career, just retired after I think it was 48 years in sports, which is
crazy.
A long time in sports.
His Wikipedia page not updated.
Yeah, so for a long time, people would go in because his job in college sports is he makes a lot of people angry. And so people would go in and just like change the Wikipedia, and then the CFP was like took down his Wikipedia at some point. And so maybe it'll be updated one day. I don't know. But, growing up, he really was just my grandpa.
Right.
And, we'd spend Sundays going through Saturdays watching football, and Sundays him getting calls, and the BCS days him getting calls from reporters, figuring out what's the vote.
Right.
We'd, he lives in Kansas City. We'd spend the weekends with him and have a blast just sitting there and getting to be immersed in these conversations with like Heather Dinich and truly the greatest sports writers of all time. And it's like, wow, I'm sitting in a room with my grandpa on the phone with these people. And it's, if you look at his job, you're like, oh yeah, he's gonna be on the phone with these people. But to me, it's like, my grandpa's on the phone with these people.
Yeah, he's kind of cool. Yeah.
And so that was always interesting growing up. But I think it instilled a lot of his beliefs in us, of just growing up watching him work.
Right.
He's a big proponent of just do the right thing and be honest about it. And if you screw up, be honest about it.
Right.
And I really tried to carry that mantra through, because that helps you in journalism, and it helps you in your career. I think the other thing, he started as a journalist. His other big piece of advice is get stuff right.
Yeah.
And I also try and do that.
Yeah, fair. I mean, it's a lot easier to do it the right way than to, my boss here, Gabe, always is like, do it the right way first, like, so you don't have to go back. And that's always, he has like a funny saying he says about it, which now I'm not going to remember. But he always is, we're going to do it the right way first. We're not going to, push it to the side and just get it done just to get it done. So
I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I know we're running out of studio time here.
Okay.
But I'd love to have you back at some point. Maybe
Yes.
we'll let you get a couple more years of experience.
Well, thank you.
You know, you did your 15-10. We didn't even talk about that. Your 15-10 stuff.
Yes.
Real fast. Years ago, as a little wee high schooler, our own Jack and Mr. Boger, Mr. 810 is what I like to call him. His daughter did a show here. How did you guys get that started? How were you in contact for that?
Yeah, so that was my sophomore year, and Chad Boger sent out an email to all of the athletic directors. He was like, hey, do you guys have any students that would be interested in doing this show with Lainey? And I think we had representation from, in the first season, Blue Valley High, Blue Valley North, and Southwest were the ones that responded. And maybe there was a Northwest. I don't really remember.
Right.
And so Kelly Curley was just like, hey, Jack, I got this email. You're the only student that we have announcing, I want you to do this. And I said, okay. And then I came over and did it, and it was an incredible experience. And I loved every second of it. It was just awesome.
Yeah.
Got to hone in my interviewing and story crafting skills, and it was awesome.
Great. I wanted to bring that in because, I like to brag about all of my show guests because, this is the smallest show at the station. So I like to be like, hey guys, I got someone cooler than you did this week. This is all about him.
Well, thank you.
And of course. And I was saying like, yeah, he got his start here, like, and he's doing bigger things and coming back now. Look at me go. I'm just bringing him back. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, anytime. We'll have to do it again. But everyone out there, make sure that you follow Jack on socials. It's Jack Hancock _ on Instagram or Jack Hancock 1776 on Twitter, which is iconic.
Thank you. Yeah, I was trying to figure it out, and because I didn't want to sound like a bot, and I was like, I love his 17.
It makes perfect sense. All right, well, until next time, guys. But over break, we have a lot of college football to be watching, so I'm sure you and I will be on the same schedule. All right.
Great.
All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. Perfect.